All right. You mean basically you just want to have a chat at the weekend and record it? Fine. Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Because obviously we're all middle-aged now, and a lot of my friends are going through some kind of crisis.
Jesus Christ, man. Oh!
You know, there's a lot of work involved because, like, I'm going to ask you lots of questions.
You should probably burn her and throw her ashes in the river.
I mean, if you just want to have a conversation for the week, if you're lonely, Richard, just tell me.
You really know how to make me feel self-conscious. I'm sure we were. I'm sure we were cool at one point. Were we? I think so.
Consigning it to digital evidence that will then be played back to them in court.
Why are we even talking about this?
You might lose interest very quickly because I have a habit of making these passion projects very boring very quickly.
Sometimes I just like talking about things that I don't really understand.
So yeah, there you go. There's loads of questions for you. And have a lovely day.
Seriously though, are you sure?
That's my opinion.
They do say it's good to talk, but I never hear them actually talking. This show with Ben and Rich.
This show with Ben and Rich. You found a way to communicate your feelings without actually directly communicating your feelings. Stop it. And here we are, once again.
We're live.
This is the... Yeah. I just want to say, I really apologise to anyone who's committed to listening to us warble on, and they've made it past the intro, which is a solid 1 minute and 30 seconds. Just skip it.
People
it did
love
take
the
us
intro.
a month to make, though.
Yeah, I made that in GarageBand. I'm very proud of myself.
Yeah, that explains a lot, actually. This week, we're going to be talking about the subject that I think will ironically get us cancelled. Because I did say to you when you came to me and said, Ben, I'm having a midlife crisis. Please help me. I'm trapped in a house with 4 women. Nobody loves me. I might as well go and eat worms. That we will probably hear some of these conversations played back to us in the court of law. I think it will be this one, because today we're talking about cancel culture. I know that I've got a few views that would potentially get me cancelled.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not
probably
going
have
to
as well.
lie. I have had a bit of anxiety about this one. I love you very much, and we're very good friends, but we do have differing opinions on certain things, and they tend to be the more controversial topics.
I just don't understand why you don't support the Third Reich. I think that's a joke. NB. It's stuff like that.
They made mistakes.
But they were really efficient and snappy dresses. You can't argue with that.
Again,
that's
jokes. I mean, this is part of it, isn't it? What is a joke anymore? Like, who knows?
We'll
find out.
We will find out. I think that first we need to get our definitions laid out, because there's a lot of vocabulary and a lot of different ideas around the concept of cancel culture. Modern vocabulary includes woke, for example, and joke. The definition of a joke, we'll get into that in a minute, because a lot of legislation has come in to help us identify hate speech. There you go, more vocabulary. The laws are very different depending where you are in the world, because I live in Spain, as you know, and over here we don't have defined hate speech laws. But in the UK, in the last 20, I think maybe 30 years, the how language is used has become a bit of a hot topic. The insight to violence, I think, was always the foundation of our speech law. Obviously, you can't say anything that encourages people to cause harm to others, which is completely understandable, logical, and I don't think anyone would ever argue against that. But more recently, we've had how language incites hate, and hate is it gets into a kind of abstract subjective area where you have to explore language and how it's used, and that's very, very complicated. And I think that's where a lot of modern people don't really understand why we're having these conversations. I'll tell you where it all began: the internet.
I think everything you've said is absolutely right. I think we should prefix this by saying there are certain things that people do that get them cancelled, which neither of us can argue with. You know, if Jimmy Savile, cancelled. Awful human being. Cancelled.
But how is it? What do you mean by that, though? Because I mean, agree that he was an awful human being, and everything that he did was awful. But how did he get cancelled?
Well,
because he was like, it was like a post cancellation, because all of that came out after he died, didn't it? All of the controversy, all of the people affected by his hairstyle.
I think. Well, ironically, he's all over everything at the minute. Steve Coogan, you probably haven't seen this, but there's been a sort of docudrama on the BBC.
Right. No, I've not seen that.
Steve Coogan does an amazing job of playing Jimmy Savile. Like, it's creepy.
That's a tough gig. I can't believe he said yes to that. Wow, fair play to him.
Yeah. But, it's sort of brought everything about Jimmy Savile up again. But, in this docudrama and documentaries I've seen previous, he sort of did get cancelled because of all these rumours, which ultimately turned out to be completely true. And he shouldn't have been on telly, and he shouldn't have been, sort of deified, if that's a word.
That's kind of the antithesis of cancel culture, because, and this is the paradoxical nature of cancel culture, is when you try to cancel somebody, you have to announce that you're cancelling them, and that draws attention. So, I mean, there are examples that we'll look at later on where attempts at cancelling have actually driven up shares, and they've allowed people to become more successful and more popular than they were previously. So there is a bit of a I suppose it depends where the cancelling is coming from, but I'd like to, if you may, just take my hand and I will guide you through the early advent of cancel culture in the Orient, and in what's funny about that? Was that a racist snigger because I said the Orient?
Oh, well, I don't know if you can say the Orient anymore, but
are you not allowed to say
I don't know. Well, I don't know.
Well, this is the other aspect that I missed off the list.
Started, but that's...
is political correctness. That's I should have mentioned that earlier on. But being PC, our vocabulary has changed so many times over the years in the UK. Even like acceptable terms for groups of people. Even like some of our charities. You know exactly what I'm referring. I don't even want to say it out loud because we will get cancelled. But there used to be a society for people with disabilities, let's say. The name of the...
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. And
Are you with
know
me?
What's really weird?
What?
Not that long ago at dinner, Evie, our 13-year-old, was talking about English and a test she'd done. And she goes, I lost a lot of marks on the spag marks.
Excuse me?
I said, what?
Is that something about Italians? It's about...
No, it's spelling, punctuation,
cuisine,
and grammar.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I said to her, like, do you know what that means? And she's like, yeah, spelling, punctuation, and grammar. So that's a good example of, like, a word that probably shouldn't have been used, but was at one point acceptable, but then became like an insult, and now has just disappeared, and it's only us that know about that.
Yeah. I miss the old insults from the old times, you know. They hit differently now.
Some of them were like just too much, right? And I think this is where we'll get to in this conversation. But sort of times have changed, obviously, because time does that. but
Yeah.
also standards, innit, and what is acceptable and what isn't.
Well, I'll go back to the beginning of my tale, my
Please,
yarn,
yeah.
and I'll make it more acceptable to your sensitive ears. I'll take you, if I may, on a voyage to the eastern part of the globe,
Okay.
Asia.
Okay.
Asia.
Yeah.
It's in China, all right?
All right.
Chill out.
China.
Yeah. A bit of Chinese slang, which I'm now going to mispronounce. Please don't cancel me. It from 1991, which was Renru Sao Suo, I think, something like that. It translates as human flesh search.
Right. Okay. I'm not
Right,
sure where we're
okay.
going, but carry on.
Right, so basically it's the early days of the internet, and it's kind of like a human search engine. So it's all about, very similar to our conversation relating to collectors from last week. It's people that are fanatical about things. And in China and I'd say, in Japan, other Asian countries, they have a kind of fanatical culture about... what do I want to say? Like I'm thinking of Japan more, but they like the cult, fashionable cults. Like you get a lot of like greasers. You know what I mean by greasers?
Yeah.
They get kind of obsessive about those things, and they get absorbed by the fanaticism. But this was about people coming together as a kind of community. There's another bit of slang is wangmin, which means web citizens,
Okay.
and or wangyu, which means web friends. There's a little bit. So that human flesh search thing, I know it sounds like something else, but it's more just like people who are curious, or they have a shared passion, and they were like a detective agency. They would go out and they would find interesting facts and information about figures of interest for the fandom, like for the fans. But then, and there's no explanation for this, the community kind of started to turn its attention to wrongdoers, people that were, what would you say, like they were looked upon negatively by society or by the group. So, for example, crush videos. Have you heard of crush videos? It's horrible.
No.
You ever heard of that?
Is it like
It's when-
larger people
it's
sitting on small people?
It's no, it's worse than that. It's like it's a type of snuff video.
Oh no.
And a woman, usually wearing stilettos, would crush a small animal.
Ooh.
And this community took it upon themselves to use details in the videos to find those people and out them, and basically make their lives hell. But it kind of expanded out into all different areas. Like they'd see a businessman that was wearing, I don't know, a watch that he couldn't afford on his pay grade, and they'd go after him. And yeah, it was just like a vigilante community in the very early days of the internet.
So it wasn't celebrities that had like a skeleton in the closet. It was just like
normal
people. Well,
just vigilante
mice,
fandom, exactly.
Normal? Okay.
But the Western version of that is doxing.
Okay.
I'm sure you've heard of doxing before, right? You know what doxing is?
No.
You've never heard of doxing. It's the same thing. It happened around about the same time. It's part of an online community thing, and it comes from an abbreviation of docs, or for documents.
Yeah.
And it basically means that they would release private information or private documents relating to a person. It was part of the hacker culture. They'd use it as a form of revenge.
Okay.
So if you, I'm not really sure how. I'm not very good with hackers, but one of the main aspects of being a hacker is that you're anonymous, right?
Yeah.
So the best thing that you can threaten a hacker with is letting people know who they are, and maybe they've been involved in some sketchy stuff. And if you get doxed, then everybody knows who you are, and they come for you.
Ah, so all your personal details are released, and it just messes you up for
This is
whatever reason.
early days of the internet, like when we didn't really know what we were doing, and dial-up connection.
Wow.
And I think basically out of that, this more modern version of cancel culture has emerged, because I think one of the main issues that we'll agree on is that we still don't really know how to use properly and govern the internet. And people have a lot of power, and they have power over each other as well. And power to express things that maybe they wouldn't express ordinarily in down the pub.
No, and I think, obviously there's a big gap between that early sort of 1999 internet stuff and when I think cancel culture sort of really took off, especially in sort of the Western culture, so America and over here. I'm sort of thinking that was sort of mid 2019 maybe, but it does seem that social media has been the platform to certainly start these campaigns of cancelling people.
Are you worried that you might get cancelled? Because I am shocked that you haven't been cancelled yet. I would encourage anyone who's listening right now to do some research on Rich and just get him cancelled.
Yeah, I mean, honestly though, if you Google me, shit comes up. Like,
does it really?
Yeah, like,
oh my god,
good stuff.
I was
and
joking.
Bad, but not awful. Jesus, But I've got rid of those.
Well,
I
think we burnt those, didn't we?
I think. And this is something I've been thinking about. I mean, because more often than not, it's a celebrity, isn't it? But find a celebrity that hasn't got a skeleton in their closet.
For sure, but it's not just the celebrity, because we live in the digital age, and digital is forever. So you can't. Everybody's made mistakes, but at least if you grew up in the analog era, pre-internet, or at least when it was emerging, like. I did some stupid stuff when I was a teenager, like all teenagers, but that's all buried in the past. Nobody took a photo of it and uploaded it to a social media platform.
Yeah.
So I've managed to escape my past to some extent, but I'm sure there's probably still some weird stuff out there somewhere.
Well, I mean, even on Facebook, I had a 20-year period of a bit blurry time, and Facebook gives you these memories, doesn't it? And I don't think there's anything particularly insulting or incendiary on any of my posts, but just seeing stuff that I wrote sort of 10 years ago.
There's a few pictures of you. I think just because your face is it's quite shocking. I think a lot of people would be offended by that.
I can't just get cancelled for having my face.
For the way you look.
Yeah, I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, it's not fair. I think that the younger generations are having to learn to deal with something that we probably don't fully understand, because, like I say, we grew up before it existed. We grew up through it, and they're growing up with it. And I don't think they're necessarily being trained in how to behave in a digital space, because there's a sense of anonymity which comes with, like I was saying about the hackers, where people can say things and express things that they wouldn't in a normal face-to-face environment.
Yeah.
And then it only takes one person to say, "Hey, where do you work?" Or "I'm going to Google you and find out where you work. Your employers are going to be interested about these comments that you've made about." Give me a controversial thing.
Trans people.
Oh, geez.
They'll go too big too soon.
For example, look at this guy making these comments about Bud Light and the fact that he doesn't drink it because it's not a heterosexual beer or whatever. And then suddenly he goes into the office the next day at the Coors factory, and they say, "No, mate, we can't have someone like you working here," and that's his life ruined. But should people have that power? Should they have the power to? Because I think, isn't it as bad? Aren't they as bad as each other?
I think people, all of us, have the right to be offended.
Hmm.
You know,
That's literally part of your freedom of speech. Is if I can't say something that's offensive, then what can I? And who chooses? Because again, it's subjective. I
well,
mean, there are clear lines, like we're saying about the hate speech and incite to violence. But you should have the right to be an absolute moron, and I should have the right to say, hey, you're being a moron. If you start putting up walls around different areas of language, I think it gets pretty tricky pretty quickly.
I think we misstepped each other. I said everybody has the right to be offended.
I find that very offensive, actually, that you've just said that to me.
I think you took that as everyone has the right to be offensive, which is equally true.
They do. They're both
which
true.
is equally true. But you know, it's the reaction to that, I think, isn't it?
Well, why should somebody's level of offence trump a person's level of being offensive?
Again, I think it comes down to the subject. I mean, there are subjects that are universally accepted as being no-go areas, aren't they? You know, like.
Well, where do you draw the line? Because I'm a balding man, and I'm short, and my entire life you've reminded me on a daily basis that I'm too short.
With love.
That I'm literally like it's a disability, like that you've told me that I'm not a complete person.
Weirdly, Sharon played me a song the other day by Randy Newman. Do you know that song?
Yeah,
Short people. That's offensive.
Are you doing it as a couple now? Are you? You're bringing your fiance. This is disgusting. I'm getting you cancelled.
I didn't know that song existed. I was like, what the hell? Randy Newman, Toy Story, and he's just being mean about short people. Look, but equally, if you were really offended, you were really offended, I think on a couple of occasions, I think I probably have offended you with short jokes and stuff, and I think I have apologised.
I have been. No, you shut up. You've never apologised for anything in your life ever.
Well, maybe I eased up on them a little bit.
Is that? What do you mean by a little bit? Are you having a go?
All right, you can see how complicated this becomes, can't you?
I probably have been offended before, but do you know what happened afterwards?
You got over it.
Absolutely nothing. I continued to be short. That's what happened.
Yeah.
It's changes. Who cares? But that's just my point of view. Anyway, I think that there's no realistic way to build boundaries around the type of language, maybe, but how language is employed and how it's used is in a digital space is almost impossible. And this is the thing, it happens digitally, doesn't it? Almost always. I think, like, because when people are communicating with each other in the flesh, we hold ourselves to different standards, and I think that if somebody starts to get a little bit out, they start to be a little bit too kind of out of control with the things that they're saying, most people would police that and they would say, hey, steady on, at the very least. I don't know, maybe that's not true.
No, I think that is true. You know, I think there's a massive difference between what people say online and what people say face to face. You know, that's where the term keyboard warriors come from. I suppose. You know, you suddenly, you know, are a lot braver when you're behind a computer screen.
This is why I think that the people who use the power to kind of destroy somebody's livelihood are as bad as they are as bad as whatever the crime is that they perceive as being committed. And I just want to go back to, I found this interesting extract from a book called Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents, by a journalist, American journalist called Isabel Wilkerson. I'll just paraphrase it, but she basically talks about how the Greeks had a a rite of almost human sacrifice called pharmakos, and they would beat a person and parade them through the streets before they were exiled. And that person who is chosen represented the sins of society. So it's like a cleansing ritual. But the point that she makes is that there was no kind of discernment between the group that was labelling the evil and the evil itself, if that makes sense. It's what they call othering. You try to externalize the problem and make it outside of yourself as a group, and then that's done, that's dealt with, and you can believe yourself to be free of blemishes, as she writes.
Yeah,
but it doesn't work.
No, I mean it feels like a double standard, doesn't it? Like massively.
It's a moral flex. I think a lot of people, virtue signalling is another phrase that I should have mentioned at the beginning. It's an opportunity to appear morally superior to others when you're policing them. A lot of people don't have that kind of power in their lives, in their day-to-day lives. A lot of people, we're just getting on with things, and you probably wouldn't call somebody out on something or try and police something or try and be the hero. White knighting. There you go. There's another phrase.
But again, it comes down to moral standards as well, doesn't it? I mean, who sets this moral standard?
Exactly. Whose moral standards?
My moral standards might not align with yours, and I think me and you, we've got fairly similar moral standards, I guess. But
poor hygiene, for example. Yeah.
But I might not have the same moral standards as someone else, And actually, this is something I deal with at work quite a lot. We talk about values with our clients, and the guys that are out on the street as using various substances. Their values, whilst their core values might be similar to mine, family, love, friends, that kind of thing. The values that they have to take on whilst in the situation that they're in are very different to mine. They have to believe that there's no problem with shoplifting to fund their habit. Otherwise they couldn't do it. So who's setting these values? I suppose in the olden days it was the church, and they were like as dodgy as anyone else. So I don't know. This is a complicated one then.
I mean, do you think that you should derive your value system from the state? Do we trust the state with our morality? I mean, I don't trust them.
I mean, how can you?
Anything else?
When half the people getting cancelled are the bloody politicians and the people in power, and then you find out they're up to no good. It's I think it's an internal thing, isn't it? Really.
There's a sense of, I think, tribalistic victory when the right person according to your personal views gets cancelled. So I don't go in for the whole right versus left thing. I think it's just another tool of division, and I have views that belong to different political perspectives. I don't define myself according to those. I know some people, that's how they live their lives, and fine, whatever. Send me something nasty in the post. I don't really care. But people cheer very loudly when, for example, Trump. People that don't like Trump, that becomes their whole identity, and cancelling him is just. I mean, see how many times he's been impeached. It's like just an obsession. But it happens on the right and the left. Equally. In fact, I've got a little list. There's a list of some people on the right versus the left that have been cancelled.
Okay, we could make this into a game, Ben. How many of these people I know, or I could guess whether they're left or right.
Well, you tell me,
because you know my stance on politics. I don't know enough about it, so I don't pay attention.
So if it's left or right, as in This was an attempt at cancellation by the left or by the right.
Okay.
Forget about the name of the individual and their personal position. J.K. Rowling.
That was the left. I know about that. She's not a
Yeah.
politician. I don't like her because I saw her do a talk at London Book Fair, and she was well
She ignores
annoying up herself. But that was because she didn't necessarily agree with everything the trans community were putting out there. I mean, I think she's been pretty cool with the LGBTQ stuff. You know, like. Dumbledore was gay, I think.
Yeah,
and,
man.
You
this
know,
is this is one of the problems with the cancel culture community. Whoever's invoking the right to cancel, you can't apologise to them because they never concede ground. It always goes in one direction. They just want you eliminated. And there are many examples of people turning around and saying, "Oh, sorry, I apologise. I shouldn't have said that." But they just keep coming at you. So never apologise. That's your philosophy, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Who's next?
I'll do. Okay, right, let me see. Ellen DeGeneres.
Right. I've always had my suspicions about her being a mean person, but I say that now with the knowledge of all this, of all the cancelling stuff that happened. But I think that was the left again.
No, it was the right.
Oh, was it?
It was the right wing
okay.
that wanted her cancelled. What was it again? I could very quickly find out.
Oh, I think she was just dead mean to everyone who worked on the show. That was
Yeah.
the allegation, anyway. Which I can believe.
I think she caught a lot of flack for being homosexual and being part of the. Not being homosexual as a woman. See, I'm worried now because I might have just said the wrong thing.
I think you can say she was a gay woman, Ben.
Can I say that? Am I allowed to say that? Am I permitted to say that by the cancel community? Thank you so much, sir. Yeah. Please give me another crumb of freedom. Yeah. See, yeah. For that, apparently, I mean, that was. She's been on TV for ages. That was 1997. Roseanne Barr.
Well, she recently did a podcast with one of my favourite guys, a guy called Theo Von, who's like an American comedian. I love
Theo.
And they got the podcast was taken down because she made a joke about the Holocaust, which she was being satirical. I've heard it, and I think Roseanne Barr is Jewish as well. But for whatever reason, they had to take the whole show down. I didn't realise she'd been cancelled. I thought she was still knocking about.
It's funny because. By the way, was that left wing or right wing?
Left.
Yeah, correct. There you go. 5 points, 5 stars.
Thank you.
They're not gold stars though. She in Roseanne, in her TV show, her daughter, the character played her daughter was lesbian. It was quite a kind of open-minded show.
Yeah.
And it's very accepting of
quite
people
forward-thinking for the 90s as well, I suppose. Yeah.
I'll do one more. Literally, Michael Moore.
Everyone's tried to cancel Michael Moore.
Everybody hates him. Maybe he's just not a very likeable person. I don't know.
Well, I love Michael Moore's documentaries, but I think he upsets a lot of people by doing them on both sides. So everyone tried to cancel Michael Moore.
No, it was the right wing, apparently, according to this list that I'm reading. But I think you're probably quite right there. Actually, I think he probably got flack from both sides. Yeah. Just going back to what you mentioned there about Roseanne's Holocaust joke, getting her into hot water. Obviously, it's a very, very sensitive subject, and comedy is at the forefront of the cancel culture argument, because we're not saying, I don't think anyone is saying that it should be protected speech, if such a thing exists. But you would imagine, out of all of the different areas of communication that something that is designed as a joke would be accepted as thus, regardless of your sense of humour. You have the right to laugh. You have the right to not find it funny at all. You have the right to stand up at a comedy show and walk out.
I do. Yeah, I agree. But I think it's how the joke is constructed. You know, I think there has to be a certain level of nuance within a joke. If it's, yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, like I'm just thinking about comedians who have got in trouble. Like Jimmy Carr often got in trouble. And who's the Scottish fella?
Count Dankula.
No, but
because I want to talk to you about Count Dankula.
Yeah, but there's a lot of comedians who have gotten a lot of trouble over it.
Billy Connolly, you thinking of?
No.
Frankie Boyle.
Yeah, thank you.
He switched teams.
He's
interesting,
controversial, but also incredibly funny. And I find Jimmy Carr really funny. But then Roy Chubby Brown, I don't find funny. I think it's just too simplistic, idiotic jokes appealing to the moronic end of society.
I find that offensive.
Right, maybe.
I identify.
Right to be offended.
Yeah, well, I identify as the moronic end of society, and I think you've stepped over the line there. The reason I mentioned comedy because I wanted to introduce Count Dankula. Are you familiar with him?
Vaguely, you mentioned him to me the other day, and I had a brief look. But I think go for it, mate. Explain Count Dankula.
Real name Mark Meacham. He's an interesting character. He was just a nobody YouTuber really. Now he's absolutely huge. He's got a huge channel, got a huge following, and he's got quite an interesting series called was it Bad Lads? I think he does a series on like nutters, like just crazy psychotic dudes throughout criminal history. But he's got his niche and he's doing a good job. When he started off, hang on, I'll just put a picture of him on the screen for visual reference because it's nice to look at someone in the eyes when you're talking about their crimes against humanity. He's the one on the right. The one on the left is his girlfriend, now wife's dog, his little pug.
This was controversial, wasn't it?
Yeah, what was the pug's name? I can't remember. There was the most controversial thing was the name of the pug, I think. Was it Buddha? I have to find it somewhere in this document. I think it was Buddha. But basically what he did was he did a YouTube kind of diary series. His girlfriend was absolutely obsessed with the pug. She thought it was the sweetest, cutest thing in the world, and he decided as a prank to turn the sweetest thing in her life into a Nazi. And he trained the dog to do a Nazi salute. And after he'd used a specific phrase, which I'm not going to repeat because we definitely 100% will get in trouble. Now we will, because the speech laws in the UK changed based on this court case. So he was cancelled by the online community, and then the Scottish Council of Jewish Communities got involved. It was actually the Scottish police that took him to court. Everybody thought it was a complaint that came from a specific person, but it was actually the Scottish police that took it to trial. And they didn't really know what to do because it just never happened before. So they had to kind of start feeling around the edges of speech laws to find what it was they were persecuting him for. I think he got off on the original what they were originally charging him for, but he did get a fine. What was his fine for? I can't remember. He had to pay £800 in 2018. It took ages. I went through court for ages. But it basically, it changed the way that the UK police approach language online. In fact, we now have a new unit in the police force dedicated to knocking on people's doors and saying, "Hey, are you Big Boy 500? Yeah, that's my handle on Instagram. You made this comment," and they'll just say, stop it, stop being mean online, or we'll throw you in jail. I don't think they can though. They come around and just tell you to stop. Has that happened to you yet?
No, I'm just reading a little bit more about Count Dankula.
Are you reading while I'm just trying to educate you here myself? We know you can't multitask.
I think, yeah. Is it anti-Semitic? Which, in my mind, is wrong. Is it racist in nature? Possibly. I've not seen the video. I don't know the whole backstory. But if it's judged that it is, do we have to accept that it is?
Well, the problem. I just found the definition. He was convicted of being grossly offensive under the Communications Act of 2003, and he was fined £800, which is, the fine, although it's a very low fine, is irrelevant. The quantity, like, what does it mean to be grossly offensive?
But also,
that's the problem.
I've just read the phrase that we're not talking about.
Yeah,
and that is offensive. Like,
are you offended by that phrase?
I think a bit, yeah.
You see, I'm not offended by that phrase, and this is exactly what I mean. Like, how do we measure that? Do we need to do a survey, do a poll of 100 people? Do you find this phrase offensive? Just offend. If 60 people get offended, then we just write that specific phrase into law.
I think because I can imagine it would be really offensive to a lot of people, and I don't see the need for him to say that. Does that make sense?
It's just his sense. It's just his sense of humour, though. This is the problem. If you can't if you're not permitted to express your own sense of humour that other people don't find funny but you do, and it's targeted at other people that might share your sense of humour, then you're not what happens to comedy there?
Also,
it doesn't have to be funny for everyone.
But also I'm thinking, like, this is I'm so anxious about talking about this stuff, which is part of why we need to talk about it, isn't it?
Exactly,
But I think, like, if he was a Jewish man and his girlfriend was Jewish and he sort of did that in front of his Jewish family and everyone laughed about it, would I still be offended by it? That's yeah.
Well,
so
would they be offended? Yes,
well, no,
maybe they would.
No, if they were not offended by it. I'm saying if they all go, oh yeah, that's funny, you made the dog do that by saying this. Oh yeah. Then would I have any right then to be offended? I'm not Jewish.
But you're justifying things by these abstract, subjective reactions. These are things that we just can't monitor. Like, at the end of the day, somebody has to decide what they believe is offensive, and that power always falls into the hands of the state, of the law.
Yeah.
And I don't think the state should have the power to say what we can and can't say, because historically they will use it negatively. There's no example in history where we've given the state the power to permit speech or to not permit speech that has ended well. Because you're talking about burning books that comes from that argument, that comes from that conversation. This, you can't use this because it's offensive. Then where are we? You need to be able to fully express yourself. That includes all. It's like humanity is. These people aren't going to go away just because you tell them that they're not allowed to say horrible stuff. How far do you go? You're not allowed to think it. Like, They need to be able to exist so all of the good stuff can exist as well. You can't just have a pure society. I mean,
No,
then
of
you
course.
really are getting into dangerous
Yeah,
territory.
no. I mean, you're 100% right. You can't have things that feel good without things that feel bad, can you? Otherwise, you wouldn't know the difference.
Shall I get rid of his face now? I'm a little bit sick of looking at it,
Yeah.
but he's gone. Um, just in connection to that, I will say there's this one quote from Rowan Atkinson, and he compares council culture to a medieval mob looking for someone to burn. I think that if you have Mr. Bean coming to your rescue in this argument, then you're on the right side, although there aren't sides. I don't know. Yeah, it's funny. Rowan Atkins has been very outspoken about all of this attack on comedy and how people should have freedom to express themselves, regardless of whether you agree with it or not. You've got your own example from your own life experience of
Yeah.
council culture you've been up close to. Do you want to dive into that briefly?
Well, yeah. Weirdly, I've been sort of semi-involved with 2 cases of people being cancelled, and it's not my fault. And I didn't really do it. But the first one, if you want to bring him up, is a guy called Mike Reid, who honestly a lot of people probably haven't heard of, or they think it's Frank Butcher from EastEnders, but it's not. It's Mike Reid, who was an old DJ. I think he was on Radio 1 for a period of time in like the 70s and 80s. I think he was fairly popular. He's presented Top of the Pops, but that's not different guy. Yeah, so he wrote a book in sort of, what year would it have been, about 2014, I'm guessing, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was one of my many jobs, Ben. I was in charge of events for Windsor and Maidenhead Borough Council. I was in charge of the events for their Arts and Heritage Service, and we had like a literary week. Why we were ever inviting Mike Reid to talk about his biography. We were pretty short on authors, I think.
J.K. Rowling was in prison or something.
They wouldn't have they wouldn't have Russell. I think another option was actually Rolf Harris, but that's another story.
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, so Mike Reid, he released this biography. But unfortunately for him, at the same time, he was a member of UKIP, I believe, or if not a member, a supporter. I mean, you can probably tell that he's quite a patriotic dude with his.
Yeah, I was going to say, did he get cancelled for his tie?
I mean, it's pretty awful. But what people were offended by was the song that he released in a reggae style, which is, acceptable. UB40, the whole old skinhead ska movement of the 80s and the 70s. But he did it in a Jamaican accent, which people were really offended by, especially as it was a song supporting UKIP. So immediately we refunded the 4 tickets that had been sold to his book talk, and Mike Reid was basically never heard from again after that, I don't think. It's not a big case, but I just thought it was quite interesting that I had to make the phone call to Mike Reid and go, so some people are offended by that kind of racist song that you've made. And and to be honest, Mike, ticket sales weren't great anyway. So we're going to cancel your event. I'm ever so sorry. And from what I remember, he was a bit pissed off about it and said, I might just show up anyway. I was like, oh, okay.
Please don't do that.
No one will be there because we're not using that venue now that night. So, I mean, go along, but no one will be there. And he was a bit aggy about it from what I can remember. But yeah, I wonder how much that ruined whatever bit of career he might have had after that.
I'm just very briefly going to mention my own, because I've got my own personal UKIP cancel culture story. I'm just going to drop him in. Hang on. I'm sure, as you know,
Sharon's favourite.
where is he? I've got to get the image up because it's great. Hang on. Sorry, I'm doing a terrible job of this. It's Nigel Farage. I can't get his face to. His face is. It's been cancelled. The image just doesn't. I can't show people what he looks like. At the very least, I'll get rid of Mike Reid. There we go. He's gone. But yeah, Nigel Farage, leader of the UKIP party. I went on a very pleasant historical tour of the battlefields of the Second World War around which area are we on? Thetford. And what people don't know about Nigel Farage is that he's a very avid historian, and he really does know his stuff about specifically the military history, because his relatives were involved. But it was great. I had a great time. I had a fantastic time. It was pre Brexit, and I suppose that's kind of the strange thing is if you meet these people that have been cancelled or being cancelled for a specific reason, and you have the opportunity to spend time with them, and they're nice people, they're good people. I mean, I'd rarely heard anyone that I knew say anything positive about him ever. So that was kind of it was a strange thing for me. Like, maybe everybody hates him for all of that stuff, but he surely knows his stuff about Second World War battlefields.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that that excuses him for whatever crimes he may or may not have committed.
Yeah.
But that much is true.
See, this is an interesting
And I had a very
one,
good time.
I've mentioned that story to Sharon, who thinks the world of you, Ben, but finds Nigel Farage to be an odious little troll of a man.
Yeah, I'm fully aware of that, and that's what I find so interesting is that people they're unable to detach themselves from the emotional response to these characters, because they are characters in your life. If you never met them face to face, they're just a celebrity, or anyone online is just a character.
I don't know. Like, Farage stands for certain political views, doesn't he? Definitely. I mean, that's his career. That's what he's made his living.
Yeah, but my point is, I didn't go on a historical field trip in any way, in any interest to anything about his political career. I wasn't there in any kind of political aspect. It's not even related.
Well, no, I mean, it would have been strange if you were. Like, you were all of a sudden the BBC's politics reporter in Zaragoza. I didn't know that. No, I get you were there for the history trip, and I suppose can you separate the two? I don't know. Some people maybe find that harder than others. Like, I'm not sure I'd even recognise.
Well, I think that's a pity.
But,
I mean, I'm not saying that, Hitler was a nice guy in person or anything like that. I don't know. I'm just saying that sometimes the outward persona that is received is, you just have to remember that people are human, I think, and that goes for again, like I said earlier on, I just don't really give a shit about this whole left versus right thing. I feel like it's another opportunity for people who don't know me to tell me what I should think about things, and I'm a staunch defender of my individual perspective. Thank you very much. We're all individuals. Oh, I'm not. Anyway,
who next?
Right, well, it'll be another one of yours, won't it? I think you just you dropped his name a second ago.
Okay, yeah, let's talk
This is probably the biggest one of recent times, although it's hard to keep abreast of all of this stuff because, like you say, celebrities are dropping like flies. They're getting hit on a daily basis. So there he is. Unfortunately, your face is over. I don't know if you know that woman that he's You've got a 20-second lag, haven't
Yeah,
you?
no, it's fine. Don't worry.
He's got his arm around some Sheila. I don't know who she is. Is that a friend of yours?
It's someone I know.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
your face is over her face, unfortunately, the way I've set it up. So
Okay,
do
so
apologise.
I don't know how much you've been keeping up with this, but there was a big Dispatches documentary about Mr. Russell Brand there, and some sort of accusations of sexual impropriety, I guess you'd call it, or made against him. Who fucking knew? He's only written like 4 books about it. You know,
Yes. It's not a secret, really, is it?
yeah. So these are
Very
new
open.
accusations. Non. Well, there was one accusation of rape, which is obviously a very serious subject, and I'm sure it is being investigated by the police. As of yet, nothing has been proven. Nothing. No charges have been made. Another allegation is that he dated a 16-year-old when he was like 30, which, while a bit creepy, it's not something I wouldn't want a 30-year-old going out with my 16-year-old daughter. Isn't technically illegal.
Well, Philip Schofield went through the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's another that's been. But let's just concentrate on Russ for now.
All right, okay, because you know him.
I don't know him, but basically, the reason I wanted to talk about this one is back in May, I was contacted by someone from Hard Cash Productions, which were the production company involved, that made this Dispatches for Channel 4.
I've got your email. I'll just pull that up. Hang on. There we go.
Don't show names.
I've got your name on it.
Okay,
I've blocked.
cool.
I've very, very professionally drawn in
right.
biro over the name of the person that contacted you.
Now, I can't say whether the allegations that were outlined in the documentary are true or not. I can't say that. But I do find it a little bit strange that I received an email, which you can see on screen now. I used to work at a rehab centre where Russell was the patron. He paid for beds for people that couldn't afford it. And I want to make it clear, in the time I was there, he didn't set foot in the rehab. This is not Jimmy Savile in that hospital kind of setup. You know, this is Russ was never in the rehab whilst I was there. He ran what we call a fellowship meeting, which happened to be online, and worked with some of the residents in that. But again, he was never in there. I got this email asking me to talk about my time working at the rehab. Little did I know, but it was actually going to turn into a questioning about Russell Brand and his behaviour, I don't know, in general life, which I know nothing about.
Yeah.
Ironically, the rehab have now cut all ties with him.
Well, yeah, this is new ground. This is breaking ground because cancel culture has such a powerful effect that even large companies, sponsors, and corporations will immediately distance themselves from an allegation. And I think you've used very sensitive vocabulary there, because even while we're talking about it to our viewership of 2 people, which is your mum and my mum, we have to protect ourselves, and an allegation shouldn't mean we have a system, a justice system in place whereby people are innocent until proven guilty. And if it is demonstrated, if it is found that he's guilty, then he deserves everything that's coming his way, for sure. Yeah. But I find it extraordinary that people demand for his livelihood to be taken away. He's obviously in a better position than most, but Remember, this happens to ordinary people as well. People do go after you if you have the wrong political perspective or if you have the wrong idea about, I don't know, like you said, something about trans, whatever, and they will contact your employer. There's plenty of examples of that happening to just ordinary people, and you can't come back from that. If you lose your job suddenly, you're not expecting it. That can destroy somebody.
Yeah, and listen,
and I don't think people should have that power.
No, I agree, and I think in this case, Russell did some and continues to do some really good work in the field of addiction. He was paying for beds for people to go into a rehab. My feelings about this particular rehab are sort of by the by. But even by saying that, I'm getting into a world of trouble, aren't I? But he was doing good stuff. I'm sure that he's not really that bothered about no longer being part of that rehab. He was literally just handing them money to help people, and he does that in a multitude of ways. But now, his platform to get out his messages and I also want to point out, I don't agree with a lot of what Russell says. I think he's a bit out there for me, and he has some views that I don't agree with. But I do feel that having sort of been involved in it a little bit, it does just feel like a witch hunt. And Russell has gone out and he hasn't really made a statement about this, but he's sort of suggested that because he's against mainstream media and certain political people and stuff, perhaps this is just a big witch hunt to cancel him. And all the stuff that he has done, he has apologised for. He's written books about it. But, the counter-argument is he's made a career of doing those things and then later apologising for them and telling other people not to do them, and this is why, and from what I know about Russell, he has a massive ego. He's aware of that, but maybe doesn't do that much to change it. But I think he probably is trying to be a good person. Yeah, and I'm sure there's lots of other people, I can think of a few, that have been cancelled or are in the process or like fighting back against it, who simply don't deserve to sort of lose everything that they've built up over the years.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's probably something that we can completely agree on. Again, it comes down to the level of power that I feel like there's the online community are the foot soldiers when it comes to that, but the corporations are always the one that flick the switch, and he's had all of his sponsors and everything removed, and like I say, yeah, he can probably financially survive, but it's extraordinary that somebody's life can just be taken away from them overnight. Because of something that has not been proven in the court of law. It's quite simply against how our judicial system is founded.
And also, whilst all this is happening, what about people that have been convicted? That, what's her name? Ghislaine Maxwell?
Yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell, yeah. You mean the Epstein list?
Yeah.
Mate, if you want to get cancelled, yeah, for sure, yeah, let's bring that up.
But I mean, she's sat in a prison somewhere. Hasn't been mentioned on the news for months, There's someone on, well, I don't think he is on a stamp, but, they haven't mentioned him for ages. And how it's standards, isn't it? If we're going to have one standard, it has to be a standard for everybody. And if that same standard is things that people did in 1998, like Russell's done and talked about, which at the time were accepted and celebrated. I'm not saying that it was right to accept and celebrate them. Me and Sharon have talked about this. Like Sharon growing up as a teenager in the 90s, got catcalled all the time, probably got groped in nightclubs. Now, for
Yeah.
me, I can't think of catcalling a woman in my teens or later on, or groping a girl in a nightclub.
No, well, you look like Sloth from the Goonies. What? Yeah, it's what that nobody's gonna. Why would you be catcalling people?
But
Sorry.
I'd like to think that if I
Not
did
sorry.
see it, I'd have said something about it, but I probably wouldn't in the 90s. If I saw it today, of course I'd say something.
Yeah, yeah. You
You
can't.
know, I go out with my teenage girls and I see like 20-year-olds, 40-year-olds leering at them, and I growl at these people and like just want to batter them. But I'll say something to them, you know,
Yeah.
because that kind of behaviour is unacceptable.
Yeah.
I think it was
It's,
probably unacceptable back then, but
yeah.
it was accepted.
You can't judge today by yesterday's standards, and things genuinely, just to go full circle. I think that one of the problems, or one of the foundational problems that we're talking about, is the digital world and how that's changed the way that people behave. And I think that younger people are communicating with each other in different ways now because they're growing up with that. And it's just like you say, maybe leering at women did take place in the 90s, but I feel like it would have been, I don't know, I wouldn't have been brave enough personally.
No,
I feel that it was accepted or dealt with differently than it is today, for sure.
yeah,
And you can also that, like, young people, like, you can see into a person's life without, before you've even spoken to them. You know, that's got to affect the way that people interact. You can go into their profile and look at all of the stuff that you literally anonymously stalk a person, and that's kind of weird. Like, I can't imagine what it must be like as a teenager growing up with that kind of power.
I think it's power and it's pressure, and at the start sorry, I'm going to sneeze.
Oh, it's incredibly unprofessional of you.
Yeah, at the start you mentioned woke, woke culture. Some people will use that term woke as an insult, and to me it's being more awake about people's feelings, about people's individualities, about and right, what I'd consider right or wrong, through my moral standards. But I think to be more woke is probably a good thing. It just, to me, it means being more aware of people's feelings, people's thoughts, people's perspectives. And I think, the younger generation are a lot more woke. And I think that's a good thing.
I have to say that I in my lifetime I've gone through the rather cliche standard political spectrum of being on the left and then going to the right, and what I discovered in that journey is that you end up in the same place. You go far enough in either direction, it's the same thing, and that's why I say now I just kind of detach myself from that left versus right nonsense. I think it's very it's not useful, and it's just another way of dividing people into groups. And yeah, at the end of the day, you have to do the thing that we agree is morally right as a society. That requires some kind of communal thinking and agreeing on certain things. But I don't think that people should have the power to destroy each other's lives based on feeling offended.
Fair.
And on that note, I think that we could probably say that we've solved the problem of cancel culture. Once we've done it again, we've done every time we talk, we always get to the bottom of the problem. We find the solution. God, if only more people listened.
Yeah, the world would be a better place. Yeah,
Exactly.
What, though, before we go,
Yeah.
a bit of good housekeeping. Follow us on. Oh, I nearly said Twitter. That got cancelled. Follow us on X, the Dick and Ben Show.
Yeah, do that and tell your neighbours, tell your mums, tell your mum's neighbours. Well, they're probably the same people if you live at home. And, just have a wonderful time out there in the analog space. Stay away from the digital space, except for this channel.
Yeah.
And, look after each other, right? I'm going to roll the credits, which is
Okay,
the
see
intro
you, Ben.
again.
Love you, bye.
Bye, I love you, bye.
Love you, bye.
All right. You mean basically you just want to have a chat at the weekend and record it? Fine. Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Because obviously we're all middle-aged now, and a lot of my friends are going through some kind of crisis.
Jesus Christ, man. Oh!
There's a lot of work involved because, I'm going to ask you lots of questions.
You should probably burn her and throw her ashes in the river.
I mean, if you just want to have a conversation for the week, if you're lonely, Richard, just tell me.
You really know how to make me feel self-conscious. I'm sure we were. I'm sure we were cool at one point. Were we? I think so.
Consigning it to digital evidence that will then be played back to them in court.
Why are we even talking about this?
You might lose interest very quickly because I have a habit of making these passion projects very boring very quickly.
Sometimes I just like talking about things that I don't really understand.
There you go. There's loads of questions for you. And have a lovely day.
Seriously though, are you sure?
That's my opinion.
They do say it's good to talk, but I never hear them actually talking. This show with Ben and Rich.
This show with Ben and Rich. You found a way to communicate your feelings without actually directly communicating your feelings. Stop it.